Hey, I want to share something with you today as a basis for discussion.
Boston College's Jeff Macor learned how to use the left field wall like Wade Boggs used to, knocking home a couple of runs in a 12-1 win over Northeastern.
They beat us twice already this year, so I mean they put a pretty bad beating on us last week, but came back. We've been playing good ball lately, so it went well.
Despite the loss, it was Northeastern's Ben Beck who may have left with the longest lasting memory. It was certainly the longest.
I feel like I got a good piece of it, so I want to watch for a little while. You know,
I guess every kid around here in this entire area dreams about hitting one out at Fenway. Is that pretty much your feeling?
it's been my dream for my whole life.
Who's that guy?
In the yearbook, that's what I wrote I wanted to do, and I got a chance to do it last year, and it's nice to do it again.
Mike Dowling, SportsCenter 5.
Long time ago. So the background to that is where I went to school at Northeastern University. The reason I picked that school actually, and I was going there to with the intention of playing football and baseball. I had learned very late in my high school years, as I was looking at schools, that Northeastern, unbeknownst to me, plays 2 games a year at Fenway Park. Like literally like growing up, I mean, that was close to a mecca for me as there could be. And I guess I'll go tell the quick story is that I was driving down to the Boston area with a high school buddy of mine, to visit a few schools in that area, BU and such, and I saw the lights on over at Fenway Park. And as we were coming over the Tobin Bridge, and I'm like, oh, wow, I knew BU didn't have baseball, so I wasn't going to go to BU anyway. I'm like, geez, it'd be cool to go to somewhere that's really close to Fenway Park. And then, so I went in and talked to the baseball coach at Northeastern, which really wasn't even on my list, and learned from him that, oh yeah, every 2 years, there's actually a tournament. It's really popular in hockey, actually, because the Bean Pot tournament every year in college hockey is a really big deal. And I didn't know about that. But there's actually, what I didn't know also was there was a Bean Pot for baseball. And we got to play in, if you played at Northeastern or Harvard or BC or any of those, you have to play 2 games every season at Fenway Park. When I heard that, I made my decision right away. I was going to play there. And then you saw in the video, I got the opportunity to hit a home run over the Green Monster, which was actually the in the high school yearbook, you write your ambition in life. It was actually, my ambition was to hit one over the Green Monster at Fenway Park, not having any idea that I would have the opportunity to do so. It was a pretty, anyway, that's not the story. And that's not the point behind showing that video. So with everything that's going on in the market today, over the past year or so, and all of these, not to shine a light necessarily on what's going on today, but all of these like uncomfortable corrections, frequent corrections that we go through over time, it actually, this year has actually reminded me of my experience back then, because leading up to that point and that season, leading up to that at bat at Fenway Park, I was having the worst experience playing baseball I ever had in my career. So at that point, it was about probably halfway through the season or pretty close. And I was, to put a word on how I felt as an athlete, as a player, I felt paralyzed. And the reason I felt paralyzed was I was just having such a terrible season. Nothing was going right for me at the plate. And there's like a saying in baseball, like when things are going well as a hitter, there's a saying in baseball, like, oh, everything, and it kind of feels that way too when things are going well. Every pitch that comes at you looks like a beach ball, right? If you can conjure up the image of a beach ball, and with the conceptually like, oh, wow, much easier to hit like a beach ball coming at you than a little baseball. You know, when things are going well, everything looks easy. Everything feels easy a lot of the times. And when things are going poorly, and I would say extremely poorly, at that point of the season, for me, the baseball looks tiny coming at you. It's like, oh my gosh. And every time you step up to the plate, you have this feeling of like panic. It's like, you know, 3 strikes and you're out, right? You get up there, you have at least 3 swings. Yet when you're in periods of time where you're really struggling, even the first pitch in, you know, in your mind, you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm already down 2 strikes when you're not. This period of time and the corrections that we go through in the markets just reminded me of this time, because all the pressure that we put on ourselves, all the proclivity to panic, as I'm explaining, in terms of having just a terrible season. I was absolutely, leading up to that, the worst performing hitter on the team at that point. Absolutely. But then it was just one hit, happened to be at Fenway Park, and over the Green Monster, that changed everything for that season. And then from that point forward, I have to look back at the stats, but at least in my mind, somewhere close to, over the next 7 games, I think I hit 9 home runs. And it changed the trajectory of the season from that point on. And I went on to do really, really well overall in the season. And it also changed the way I felt, and it changed the way I approached those future at bats. And it taught me a lot, actually, about you know, all this pressure that we put on ourselves, but all these external forces that we perceive as threats and we perceive as failure, that can impact decision making, to the point where I'm going up to the plate, you know, leading up to there, and the games leading up to there, where I've already failed in my mind, and I have to do something dramatically different to change that. And the truth of the matter is, that's not the case. Truth of the matter is, however paralyzed I felt at that point, however like panic mode I was in, you just keep stepping up to the plate, you get your pitch eventually, and one pitch and one good day can change everything. And it just taught me, without knowing it at that point, obviously, but, you know, experiencing all of the downturns and the corrections, and negative news media, and everything that comes along with investing, putting myself in, and I'm an investor personally, obviously, and we invest money and plan for all of our clients, really puts me in those shoes and say, geez, you know, during time periods like this, it feels like, you know, some days you see the market's down, or, you know, you check your statements, it feels like you're paralyzed. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, but I feel like I have to do something different, maybe dramatically different. And that's just not the case. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you as a, share that as, you know, what was going through my head, you know, recently. I'm like, geez, you know, a lot of similarities here in terms of what I can see is how people feel when they feel like they're out of control. And when it comes to finance, that's a really emotional topic, right? And so, geez, wow.
Yeah. I love seeing that baby face. I had never seen this video. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I think, you know, the thing that I think about as I'm listening to you is we're so like hardwired, especially in this society, to be like perfect. Like everything has to be perfect all the time, you know? So this, when things don't quite go our way, even though you and I know that this is cyclical, what we're going through, it just feels like there's something there, surely there's something that I must do differently in order to make it so, right? As opposed to just surrendering to, it's just the way it is. I'm on a ride, and right now we're in the dip. Now we're going to be up on the, you know, we're going to crest.
Yeah. Yeah. Cyclical. That's a great word, because that not only describes how the markets are in the short term, right? They're very cyclical. There's not an immense amount of predictability in terms of the short term, right? The markets are very unpredictable in the short term, good or bad. And over time, as we've talked about, that lack of predictability, as every day melts away, that lack of predictability actually falls in terms of what great companies, in terms of the prices, the stock price in your portfolio, eventually grow to as a factor of what they earn over time. And that does converge, substantially converge over longer periods of time. So I would submit there's a tremendous amount of predictability in the long term, virtually zero in the short term. So in the markets, they're volatile. They're always searching, back and forth for things, and very similar to a hitter in baseball. There's very few hitters over time that are just like this the entire year. It's very much, if you map out the ups and downs of the stock market over the course of a year. Let's say you have a good year as a hitter. But even though you have a good year as a hitter, each day, you get 3 hits one day, you get no hits and strike out 3 times the next day. And it's very up and down. And some hitters are more volatile than others, despite what they may end up overall, how they might end up performing in the overall season. And it's just interesting to me, the similarities of how I remember feeling at the plate back then, and how we can make a lot of connections to how we all as human beings feel when we have our hard-earned money invested and we're going through these short-term cyclical periods, and we feel like some days there's nothing that we can do to make it right. But what it is to make it right, I think, is continually just stepping back in that batter's box and not just going and sitting in the dugout for a while.
Yeah. Well, because it's easy to pick up your story at just the point where you go, well, then, I hit it and everything changed for me. Like it's easy to fall into the trap of saying, oh, that kid Beck, he just had some miracle. Like a miracle happened for him on that one day. It was an amazing thing. And then he developed the confidence to going. What they don't know is, how long have you been playing baseball? How old were you when you started?
Oh boy, yeah, can't remember. It's as long as I can remember. So, let's call it 4 years old in terms of the first time in a bat in my hand. Yep.
Yeah. And very few people carry it through to college, and you actually carried it through to beyond college. So you played.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And yeah, it's easy to say, oh, there was this milestone, this miracle, as you said, in time, to say, oh my God, well, that's just something that doesn't happen. Well, in fact, I wasn't doing anything differently. Yes, but there was a point where I can remember, like, all right, things are going poorly. I've just got to sacrifice. I've got to just let myself go, devote myself to like believing in the process. There is the process that got me here, which is quality repetitions, and that not every day goes your way, but if you continue on that process, you have a strategy, you're showing up at the batting cage despite what might happen in that next game. It's not correlated on the day-to-day, but as you move forward, as I move forward as a player, you have these time periods where, okay, things start to click, and it's very cyclical like that. And you have to believe in, you have to be an optimist, and you don't have success as an athlete or an investor or anything in life, in my opinion, from approaching things with a negative defeatist attitude. Certainly, we all go through bad times in any aspect of our lives, but the requirement in terms of having the long-term success in any part of our lives, whether it's relationships or finance or sports or whatever, is that looking to the future with a sense of optimism, right? Things get better. God, this sucks to be in this slump, for the first half of the season. And everybody's like saying how bad of a hitter Ben Beck is, and believing in, I don't know why I'm going through this. I know that I'm showing up at practice every day. I know I'm putting in the repetitions. You just have to have that that confidence that the strategy that you have implemented and put in place over and over and over again, which has worked in the past before substantially, will continue to work in the future, despite these short-term, happenings, whether it's a half a season of just really dull, terrible performance. The future needs to be looked at as a bright spot. You're looking at the future with optimism.
Love it.
Hmm.
I just, it's not what I think of as I listen to you is the word that comes to me is perspective. Like when I'm looking at something with such a narrow focus, I can't really see what's going on to the left and right. And as I step back from it, I see that, there's a whole lot of possibility. It's when we widen that aperture, like in photography, and we can see just
Yeah.
so much more. And that provides possibility, so for anything to happen.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. I'm like, in my mind, I was actually, before you even described it, I was thinking about, taking a picture and where the focus is. It's right, very narrow, but if you widen that out and you see the beautiful mountains behind the person or this and that, and what's possible out there. I think that it's, we're all, to bring it back to finance for a moment, I think we're certainly all human beings, meaning we're all hardwired to be emotional. And during times of struggle, it's very easy to fall, these pitfalls of this negativity, which is all around us, right? I mean, the financial media, as we've talked widely about, is
Well, that's how they make their money.
rarely talking about positive things, right?
Right.
Talking about all the threats that are out there. Oh my gosh, the world's ending tomorrow. What are you doing about it? And all these different things. And I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of focusing on, oh my gosh. And yeah, during these times of struggle, I think you're right. I think that the focus just from an emotional standpoint, just narrows all the way down to, what did the market do yesterday? Or, oh my gosh, look at my last statement. It's a lot lower than it was, a year ago. This can't be, and realistically, and why we talk so much about the importance of planning as a broad concept, but a more focused concept of working with our clients to really identify what it is, not only what it is that they're striving for in terms of goals and objectives, but what's behind that, right? What's behind that home that you and your spouse want to purchase when you're 65? Because a goal stated just as is, I want to buy a home in XYZ state, when we're 67 or 65 or 50, whatever it is. But what's behind that? Well, going a little bit deeper, I want a place when my kids are out of college and they have families, I want to have a place that I can visualize everybody coming together at the holidays at this great home that we have a goal to buy. And that's a little deeper than just, hey, I want to retire at age 62 and I want to buy a home here and living at that. And to your point, it's like the importance of always revisiting, not necessarily what the portfolio does on a daily or weekly or monthly basis, even a yearly basis. It's certainly great to check in and do a review, but making sure that when, naturally, when that focus tends to narrow at certain points, we bring that focus back out to the big picture, right? That perspective that you're talking about. Okay, what are we doing this for? We know the markets go up and down, right? We know we're susceptible to kind of narrowing that focus during these tough times. But let's take that focus back out to the big picture. And so long as we're still on track, the strategy that we have in place is on track for those big picture goals. Odds are you don't have to do anything different. Yeah.
It reminds me of that blog that you wrote based on a story you told me about learning how to fly a helicopter, and how in the beginning, like the tendency is to just like when you're up there, go. I mean, I'll let you tell the story, but you were saying like
Sure.
jerking back and forwards wildly, but it's really not about that. And I think that's what happens when people like see external circumstances that are kind of adverse. I put that in quotes,
Sure.
and feel like they need to do something equal and opposite in reaction, right? As opposed to learning how to fly a helicopter. So
Yeah.
what's it like to fly a helicopter?
Oh, yeah. It was a little over a year ago where I took that up and started to learn how to fly in a helicopter and actually take flying lessons. And yeah, that's one of the things I learned was, well, first of all, straight ahead flying, which I thought was which I thought would be going into would be very difficult, but then hovering in place, which I thought, oh, you're not moving, so that's the easy part. What I learned very quickly as a trainee pilot is it's actually the exact opposite. That straight ahead flying, which actually my instructor gave me the controls right away, literally my first time up, we got up out of Norwood Airport right nearby, and we were flying. And once we're flying, we're actually flying right over Gillette Stadium where the Patriots play. And he's like, "Okay, you want to take the controls?" I'm like, "Really? Okay." All right. And he handed off one by one. He handed off the cyclic, which is the call it the joystick. It's what what steers everything. The collective, which is on your lower left side, which essentially, in so many words, bends the blade, so to speak, to bring the helicopter up and down. And then the foot pedals, if that wasn't enough controls already, the foot pedals control the rear rotor that control the helicopter from oscillating left and right like this. And so, but what I found was when we started to learn how to hover, straight ahead flying was a cinch. But keeping the helicopter in place with all those controls and the wind and all those different things, the joystick, the cyclic, is very sensitive. And you don't know that without that experience. And so when, we're starting to learn how to hover, and my instructor hands the controls over to me, and this was my first time down in Plymouth, at an airfield down in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And I think remembering his instructions were, okay, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna hand them over one by one. I want you to look way ahead of you. And that as you start to anticipate or feel the helicopter right or back and forth, of course, you have to make very easy corrective motions to keep things in one place. And of course, to your point, bring this up, is that, okay, when you start to feel this feeling of being out of control, right? Here you are in place, and then all of a sudden the helicopter starts to move one thing. Instead of course, reacting very calmly and cautiously and just moving, you tend to overcorrect. And so what happens then is that you go too hard in the opposite direction because you think you're correcting it properly, but you're really overcorrecting. And so then the helicopter really starts to swing a little bit more violently each time in the opposite direction. And so what happens then is like, oh my gosh, I overcorrected. Then you go back in the opposite direction. And very quickly, it's literally like a pendulum effect. I mean, it's literally like a roller coaster. Like, I grew up going to Old Orchard Beach, and they have I think it was called Palace Playland down there. And featured rides was the pirate ship. The pirate ship's a common, right? And it's a pendulum, right? And that's the ride. Everybody gets in, and then it starts swinging a little by little, and all of a sudden the pinnacle of the ride is when it's going up and coming up. That is exactly what it's like. That feeling of learning how to hover a helicopter for when you're training, and it is an unbelievably uncomfortable feeling. Then you learn what the instructor's point is in terms of it is really minute and anticipating that we're going to be going through some bumps, some oscillations left and right, and that you don't have to and you can't throw the instructions out the window. You literally have to continue to follow these repetitions of very, very little inputs and not overcorrecting your strategy, so to speak. And, through multiple times revisiting, hovering, all of a sudden you start to feel it internally. Oh yeah. You know, even if the wind is all over the place and everything, you start to feel, and then you start to anticipate and feel these tougher, and start the helicopter starts to do, oh no, it's all right. I don't have to throw everything out the window. It's just a minor little adjustment here, a minor adjustment here. Boy, was it uncomfortable the first couple of times.
Well, I imagine this is what it feels like for folks who are
Right.
seeing what's going on in the markets, right? It feels like being on that pirate ship sometimes.
And what, you know, and to a greater extent, right, in the pirate ship, you're not controlling the ride.
No.
You've hired,
Yes.
in this case, probably some 15-year-old kid, right? That's down, you know, at the base of the pirate ship, that's in charge of the controls. It takes your ticket as you walk in, you know, locks everybody in, is he or she's really highly qualified, right? And then all of a sudden, for the next 3 minutes of your life, you're holding on for dear life, right? But no, I mean, all kidding aside, I mean, from a logistical standpoint, you hire a financial advisor, a money manager. You talk about, hopefully, you talk about the strategies, the goals and objectives that you have. Preferably, I don't want to be swinging,
Yeah.
you know, tremendously and wildly and often, but I want to get to my destination in one place. And a good financial advisor is going to tell you, better said, is not going to mince their words. Say, oh, no, I've got the controls. I'll make sure everything's comfortable in this and that. That doesn't work, because that's not reality. The reality is what we've been going through over the past year, what we've gone through many times, is just that. It's not all the time. 4 out of every 5 calendar years in the market are positive. Yet 1 out of every 5, of course, is like the year that we're experiencing right now. And so you're not going to go on that ride, because roughly 20% of the time in your investing life is going to be uncomfortable, knowing that the other 80% or close to 80% is going to be the time that gets you to your most cherished goals, to be able to provide the capital later in life, so that you have that central meeting place, that house where all your kids and maybe grandkids and everybody comes to. And I just think our industry does a really poor job at making that clear. And I think a good financial advisor, as I started to say, is going to tell you just that. There's going to be times, not every day, but there's going to be times that you're going to feel like you're on that pirate ship. And know that that should be expected. Know that the strategy that we're putting in place expects that. And know that we also expect that so long as you stay on the ship and are able to ride it out emotionally and otherwise, that allows you to experience the other, call it close to 80% of the time, that is going to provide the positive returns to get you to those goals. And that's just something that a good financial advisor is going to tell you right up front, that this is what the ride is, but it's also the ride that's going to get you to where you need to go.
Right. As opposed to, I'll make sure that the pirate ship is cushy and soft and cuddly and
or we can get off at certain times.
anytime. Yeah.
Anytime, really kind of ignoring the fact that, hey, when the pirate ship really starts to swing, they don't shut the ride down and let people get off.
Right.
It goes through its cycle, and that's what's necessary to produce the fruits of that ride, so to speak, to that enjoyment, that later in life enjoyment, that enjoyment down the road.
Cool.
Yeah. anyway,
Good story. Thank you for sharing.
yeah,
So-
yeah, no, this is good. It was, yeah, you know, times like the past year or so, it conjures up for a lot of folks, it conjures up this emotion to feel like you need to do something, and then you start hearing all the talking heads and whoever it is, and it really can cause folks to question, you know, what they had set out to do, what had produced all of, you know, this appreciation in the past. And you can fall victim to, oh, well, yeah, that's fine, but this time it's different, so I have to do something different. And that's not the case. It's the same pirate ship,
Right.
different
Right.
people on it. You know, there's somebody different that you know, and there's different things happening in the world, so to speak. But the equation is the same.
Yeah.
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 Well, this is the No Bond Cast, where we talk about pirate ships and Fenway
and helicopters and hovering
and
and
finance.
everything, and finance. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, the No Bond Cast is exactly right where we talk about those things. It's exactly, it epitomizes, you know, what we talked about a moment ago about, hey, well, it is the clear, unvarnished truth that I think the best financial advisors in the world don't hold anything back in terms of, you know, providing the best advice, and with that best advice comes the perspective of what that road is going to look like, you know, along the way, whether you're accumulating money for retirement, whether you're already in retirement, and, you know, clearing away any misconceptions about volatility, about, you know, all the things, at least what we've faced in the past, and how the economy and the markets have responded, even though a day like today or yesterday, it doesn't necessarily feel that way, especially with everything that you hear out there. But in fact, you know, as we look forward, and or 5 years from now looking back, you're like, oh God, you know, that was uncomfortable. But more often than not, we all forget about, you know, to a certain extent, these numerous corrections that we go through, because the markets respond and they recover, and the trend line that goes up over the long term is in fact relentless. It is relentless, and it's a reflection of the productive capacity of our nation, of our world, and where we're going. And that's why optimism is so incredibly important, is because well, otherwise, why would you get out of bed in the morning? Right? I mean, despite what's going on, the world gets better, and the empirical evidence is there, historically. So this is the NoBondsCast, where Ravia and myself, we talk about, you know, what we consider the really important things that we think have the best positive impact on our clients and on investors, and on folks that are seeking out the advice to really have a positive impact in their own financial lives and for their families.
I love it. Thank you for having me, Ben. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you.
Yeah, absolutely. BeckBode.com. You also find us on our various social media pages, from LinkedIn to Facebook to Instagram, and anywhere most anywhere that you can listen to podcasts, we're there.
Yeah, and Relentless, the blog, BeckBode.com. See you.
Awesome. Thank you, Robbie. Bye-bye.
Bye.